have an house? Oh, so that was, that's what I
Oh, all right. I feel better
Now this is bugging me. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now you got me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. You know,
So we saw one on the water right now.
Yeah, I didn't realize it has this beautiful campfire.
Check out my name.
sure, that's on.
We're gonna check out my name.
Honestly, there's always good times. But this one, I don't think so. Good. Everybody's still with.
Wouldn't pass that along. Okay.
This is it.
Call the meeting to order, 6 o'clock. This is May 23rd special meeting for the Manitowoc Public School District Board of Education, and we'd like to start off the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And
Christopher Abel.
Here.
Biff Hansen.
Here.
Matthew Phipps.
Here.
Stacy Selner. Matthew Spalding.
Here.
Carrie Trask.
Here.
Tony Vostelka.
Here. Okay, moving on to the first part is the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Doesn't seem like we have too much in there. Okay. Looking for a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Matthew Phipps and Biff Hansen. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. And we'll move right into the report of the superintendent.
This one will turn over to Mike, for personnel report.
Thank you. And I was just informed that Lauren Davis, she's on the personnel report. Lauren Davis does not have 12 credits, therefore she cannot be in lane B. So I'd like to amend it to be lane A, 48,999. Lane A, 48,999 for Lauren Davis. Can we make that amendment to the?
It's kind of a friendly clerical amendment.
Yeah.
Mike, so that's, you said lane A is an apple.
Lane A is an apple. 48,999 is the salary.
Yeah.
Okay, she's got that one.
Mike, is the mental wellness and safety coordinator, is that Mike Murphy's job?
That was Michael Morgan. Michael Morgan's retiring at the
Yeah.
mid-June.
Yeah. That doesn't, so safety coordinator, does that cover his responsibilities or what?
Yes, that is his title currently. And safety coordinator, he's that position is responsible for the safety program that we use in the district, meaning that everything from lockdowns to where you lock the doors, but you don't lock down inside, to all those types of procedures for safety reasons.
Okay.
So working both with law enforcement and internally with.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, anything else on the personnel report?
I mean, we accept the personnel report.
Okay, we got a motion from Carrie I'll second.
Chris is in a second. All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we got unfinished business. Brought forward from the 5/9/23 regular board meeting, the second read of revised policy 2261.01, parent and family engagement in Title I programs. We're looking for,
This is the second vote on this.
yeah, this is the second read on this. If anybody's had a chance to go over that, if anything, any discussion. But we do need a first and a second, but I guess before we can get into discussion for that.
I'll let you first.
Matthew,
Second.
Viv, second. Is there any discussion on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, my only question is, do we have any information about, since a huge part of this is parent family involvement?
Correct.
How much feedback have we gotten from them on this? And if they have been made aware of it, how are we planning to let them know about the changes? I don't think the changes are dramatic.
No, they're pretty subtle, aren't they?
No, I don't think there's a dramatic change. I don't think it's anything that's gonna go out either, but it definitely would be updated on our website, correct?
So do we have a plan for sharing these changes with the parents?
We will.
Okay.
Do we normally do that when we go over policies? We send out that we made changes, or is it something that's?
No, this is something that we would have here. We would have obviously public information in terms of that these are things we're acting, but one of the things we launched this year was PTO presidents in terms of how we're engaging, families, trying to elevate that voice. So, I mean, it just provides me a nice agenda item.
Right, and and one of the huge differences in success or failure of title,
Right.
is the involvement of the parents.
Right, correct.
That's why I think it's so. The more we share it, the more.
And then some of our
participation.
requirements, like for ESSER funds and stuff like this, there were public announcements that had to be made. Okay, and I'm not sure about the title in terms of where we're at, in terms of if there was a requirement, we would have done it, but it's again, one of those things just worth mentioning if it hasn't been.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not exactly sure which copy. I think the copy with the small print that is the one where is the
Changes
the
on
one
here.
we're working on. They were in order.
It was like
Okay,
the
so
current,
yeah.
the template that you suggested, and then
The final one is
Yeah, the only comment I wrote was on item F, parents and families will be provided with tools, resources, etc. And it goes on, and it's got monitoring television watching and playing of video games. I have a granddaughter. God, I mean, it's social media that really is the thing that needs to be managed. But I guess we could just put in this separate in there, I suppose. But
I think this is wording that was given to us, right?
Well, this came up in our findings, and so we were following up with the policy in place that we had to, to meet our responsibilities.
Yeah,
Jamie spoke of it last meeting. We talked about it, and she said that these were updates that were needed to be done
okay,
because of the title
Right.
and how the title has changed the wording.
Right, so we're still into a title audit. It hasn't been finished yet, but that was some of the initial feedback that we received, and so we immediately followed up to make sure that those things were in place.
any other discussion on that? No? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. And we're gonna go into the new business. We've got a few different things to discuss about this. We're gonna kind of skip to the second one here for time reasons. The pre-K through 12 nationally normed assessment recommendation. We have somebody present for that, yes?
Jamie.
Are you ready for me to take over, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we were looking at with our strategic plan under student success is that we needed to have a system for assessment for the entire district. So we could measure and monitor how we are doing along the way. So we do have curriculum-based measures that will be in place with mathematics and ELA. We have a state standardized test, which is called the Forward. You're probably familiar with that as we report out data. And then the next thing that we need to have, Katie, if you can back up a little bit to the first page. The next thing that we need to have is we need to have a nationally normed assessment. And so what we tried to do with this assessment, we pulled a team of people together and we were looking for ways that we could cut down on some of the testing that we currently give, making sure that our assessments are aligned pre-K through 12 where possible, and making sure that it within the area of special education, that we don't have to test students more regularly if we can draw from the information or the data that we collect with the assessments we have. So next slide. So we currently have assessments called PALS that's being and that will be obsolete after this year. It's being taken out. Our special ed team uses an assessment called Ames Web Plus. And then we have the STAR assessment that's used in our district. And prior to spring semester or spring quarter, spring assessment season, we didn't use the STAR across the district, although we did have access to it. We used it at typically only one of our middle schools. So roughly 400 students were given the assessment out of our district total of 5,000. Our special ed team, because they're using Ames Web Plus, we wanted to bring them into the fold of this assessment recommendation to try to see if there was an assessment we could use for progress monitoring. Our goals were to find something that was nationally normed, that covers both math and ELA, that goes from pre-K through 12. It was a tool that we could use again for the special ed assessment. It will give us data for instructional programming, that it's cost effective, and that we could streamline the assessment time windows. So here are the assessments that we reviewed. iReady. We ruled it out because of the expense. You'll see the cost of iReady for a K-8 implementation was $218,000. We currently have the STAR available to us, K-12. However, we are spending, this is a new estimate, we are currently spending $79,000 on it. You'll see there's STAR and FastBridge in a really light color, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. We looked at NWEA. It didn't really meet our criteria because it only really goes from K-10 before the ELA component kind of tops out. And then we looked at Ames Web, and again, we didn't feel that that really met our needs. So our recommendation is going to be on FastBridge. We have a couple people that I think they're in the audience. I can't see in there. Carrie Grenevald, who has used this instrument before. And then we have Dan Redwine, who is a school psychologist that also reviewed it with us. So I wonder if the two of you can come up and talk a little bit about FastBridge and why we are recommending that one.
And Jamie, Dan was unable to join us this evening, so I'm here to be able to speak to the CDM piece if there's some questions about that.
Okay, you're going to have to use a deeper voice than Katie.
Will do. Will do, Judy.
I can start, Jamie, and kind of talk a little bit about FastBridge. So I utilized FastBridge for 3 years in a previous school district that I worked in. It allowed myself as a learning support teacher to speak the same language that I was using like in tier 3 intervention. So kids that didn't qualify for special education, but we knew we had closed learning gaps for with reading and math. It allowed our classroom teachers to be able to easily collect data on their own for interventions that they were doing in their classrooms, which I think would be really applicable with Success for All, having students that will be working in some different levels to be able to monitor their progress, to make decisions about what comes next for them as learners in the buildings, I think will be really valuable. And I think that FastBridge having a consistent across the board way for special education, general education, everyone to kind of keep that data in one spot and utilize the different CBMs and different measurements that they have in this system would be advantageous.
Yep, and just to piggyback off of that, so to give an explanation right now, what our Ames Web Plus assessment does, is when we have students that are identified as needing more than what the interventions that have already been tried are, we identify a specific skill to target, a specific skill deficit area to target. We're required to provide for learning disabled criteria, 6 to 8 weeks of a standard research-based intervention that specifically targets that skill. And then our school psychologists are responsible for providing probes and progress monitoring assessments to determine whether or not the students are making progress in closing that skill gap based on that specific intervention for those 6 to 8 weeks. And then if they continue to not make progress, then we need to move into a different standard research-based intervention that additionally needs progress monitoring. So as Carrie just said, the ability to have an all-in-one assessment that all of our educators are speaking the same language and utilizing the same data collection tools, and then speaking the same language and interpreting that data platform will just be a really great opportunity for us to focus again on achievement for our students, putting the right supports in place in regard to interventions, and then using that progress monitoring tool in addition to the supports that students that are not necessarily on that referral track will just be a really great opportunity for some consistency district-wide K-12, and it will allow us to collectively focus our professional development for our staff, and focus our efforts in one assessment platform as opposed to the few that we currently are operating under.
If we have data that's showing improvement based on this, then we narrow it and look at the practices that are attached to that improving data. And we can do that knowing that we're all using the same way of assessing the kids and keeping track of their learning. We can hone in on some really good teaching practices, and that can drive the professional development in this district based on the practices that our educators are using.
So when you look at the screen, you'll see that the STAR and FastBridge are in that lighter peach color. FastBridge is actually owned by the same company that STAR is owned by. It's called Renaissance. When we met with the representatives from that company, they actually recommended STAR be given at 9-12. We really wanted to start with FastBridge being 4K through 12, so it is aligned because the two systems don't talk to one another. But we do have the option, if we don't feel that FastBridge is rigorous enough at the 11th and 12th grade level, that after a year, we can break those two apart and then move into STAR for 9-12 if we choose to. So that's why I have those in peach.
Tony, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just, and Jamie, you may not have gotten to this, but I just noticed that part at the end that talks about the cost savings, which is great. And it sounds like this is going to do what we want right now, but there may be a professional development component. I'm assuming you were going to get to that, right?
Yep, it's on this page right here. So you'll see that as the district, we currently have budgeted $79,000 a year for STAR. We have $29,000 that we budget for Ames Web Plus for a total of expense of $108,000. Using FastBridge, which will cover all of those same components, we can get that for $38,107. So our cost savings of $69,893. That does not include the professional development. And when we are putting a new assessment in, professional development is key. People need to know how to give it, and they need to know how to use it. So that component, I'm guessing, is going to come in around anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. But it's an area that we will budget for so that we don't skimp on that.
Okay, great. So the net savings is still going to be significant. And it sounds like this is an annual recurring savings. Is that right, if this works out?
That is correct. More than the savings, though, I want to say that it helps us to put our system in place for monitoring our growth.
And I would, add to that also in terms of one of the things that we weren't doing because of having the assessments we needed as this formative assessment reference was made, to the Ford exam. That's a summative assessment at the end of the year. And while that's beneficial to understand trend data, it's like doing an autopsy go in terms of those kids that we've got. Fastbridge helps us inform our instruction going through the year. And so we will doing that periodically assessment, but it's giving us the feedback, working back with teachers in terms of making sure that adjustments are made in instruction.
Yeah, so it sounds like a better tool, a better fit, and it costs less as well.
That's better, man.
Yeah, great.
That is correct. And if you can go to the next page, Katie, these are all of the people who were part of that assessment review team. And you'll notice that we brought in from 4K all the way to high school and special education. So we wanted to make sure that everyone had a look at this. I was very pleased to have people in the room who actually had experience using it so that we could hear from them real life experience when it comes to using this tool. And we quickly narrowed down to Fastbridge. And so that's our recommendation for the district.
Go ahead, man.
Jamie, can you give me just your honest opinion of why we were using STAR? More so than it's just familiar to staff and contains historical data. What would be the indicators of why we were on that path? Because you did say maybe we'd be going back to it for the 9 to 12. Do you want to speak to that at all? Or?
Right. Well, the STAR assessment, I don't know a lot about STAR. I haven't given it, but it is a nationally normed assessment. And so it would fit into the same type of criteria. The thing is, it's a little bit more expensive. The reason we might go back to it at the high school level is because the representative said that the rigor is more substantial in the areas of algebra and geometry. So those were the two areas they pointed out. The downfall is that the STAR and the Fastbridge don't communicate with one another. So it would require us to have another platform for our assessments. So we thought we could start with the Fastbridge, and then in our contract, it will allow us to switch after a year if we find that that's true.
Jamie, could I share one piece about that?
Yes, please.
The STAR and the Fastbridge. So the more extensive algebra that STAR would give us, if we went with Fastbridge for next year, that will give us, Fastbridge will give us indicators of the algebra, like the skills leading up to being successful in algebra that students would need. So it will allow us to do some of that pre-assessment data. It'll show us the kids that get it. It'll show us the kids that have some skills that could be why they're having difficulty in some of their math classes. It gives us more of the lead up skills to be successful in those classes. And I think that's worth spending a year taking a look at that data.
Good.
Go ahead. Katie, Carrie, Jamie.
Mhm.
I like the idea of one test. And I'm assuming testing companies are all going to say the same thing. What made this test stand out from the other ones that were looked at by that group? And I love the idea there was a large group of people that came up with this.
Yeah.
Were there themes that people kept seeing that they liked?
Yeah, Carrie can jump in. I think the fact that it was a 4K-12 assessment was very appealing. The fact that it had that CDM progress monitoring component so that we could go away from having separate platforms with separate data sheets, in regard to our students with disabilities or without. So that was appealing. I think Carrie can speak to the fact that it's true to its name in regard to the implementation, right?
It is. It takes the kids 20 to 30 minutes to take the screener. So they would do that 3 times a year. And what I found is that once you got your system and your routine in place with the kids and the groups I was working with, it took me to get through 5 kids. It probably took me about 5 minutes to do the CDM total. So in an intervention of 20 minutes, I could still have 5 minutes to do the progress monitoring and 15 minutes to still work with the kids and do some type of research-based intervention, which was really useful. It also has a screening to intervention tool. So when the students take the assessment, it will give information that can be utilized in the general education setting, which would be really, I think, advantageous as well for teachers to have a starting point of this is where the students need to work on certain skills. As a middle school individual, the students take subset tests, which include morphology, which are like the bits and pieces of words put together, and phonics. And so every student will still be assessed on phonics, even at the middle school level. So again, it's giving you indicators of skills that lead up to reading comprehension at every level, which I really, really like, because there were students that did struggle with phonics in middle school, and we had to go back, but then they accelerated. So we went back and worked on those skills, and their learning picked up faster. This tool will give you all of that information.
And I think our team liked that it was very much aligned with Success for All.
I was
and
just
our-
gonna ask
yeah,
that. How
our
does this-
literacy emphasis and focus, and that it will focus on honing on some of those same skills that we will be working really hard to promote and build, grow.
I'm trying to think of this as a macro, and what I'm hearing is, how did we get to where we are now? And it sounds like we didn't have those indicators, what you're talking about, what we would have with FastBridge. So we can find out where there's discrepancies right away, so we don't get a 9th grader or 10th grader, and then we're already way behind. So it's sounding like how we got to where we aren't being able to assess correctly is by having maybe the STAR, or having a more of a high school evaluation, and we're not getting the indicators sooner, so we can make corrections to individual students. And it sounds like this is going to fill that gap. And it's very, because I want to hear the whole plan of how we got where we are and where we're trying to get to. And this sounds like a solution.
That's accurate. And when you think about students learning, the more intense and direct you can be on certain skills, it accelerates their learning. So being able to assess all of the little components that go into reading, or the smaller components that go into math, the faster you can accelerate their learning when you're targeting very specific skills with kids.
Couple members of our team as well had participated at our early learning focused people had participated in a assessment evaluation, where they learned through some professional development about some various assessments. So brought many of the notes back that we used to compare these various assessments. And again, this really was ticking all the boxes in regard to what each stakeholder at that committee level was looking for.
So does the assessment, will this give us any information lead on how it would compare with the state assessments?
Yes, so that's where this is we were looking for a nationally normed test, because SFA has its own internal assessments to determine whether or not students are making progress internally and working through that curriculum. But this will now give us that nationally normed assessment data.
One of the things they said is they have not done a correlation study between FastBridge and the Forward. So that's something that we can do internally. And like in my last district, what we had to do was say the outcome of NWEA needed to be at 60% in reading in order to predict success on the Michigan exam. And in math, it had to be at 64%. It will only take us about a year or two to determine that same amount of correlation. We won't have that coming right out of the gates, but what we will do is be able to see how accurate our SFA internal curriculum-based measure is compared to a nationally normed measure.
Thank you.
That's how you created that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to add, you can't manage what you can't measure. So I love what I'm hearing, guys.
The other thing, just in terms of this, is one of the things was that SFA was asking us for is placing the students in terms of knowing where their reading level was. And so when we were looking at middle school, that's when we were recognizing what we weren't doing. And so we were offering the STAR with both middle schools this year, so that we can try to get data off the old system, but still to create some point of reference relative to where we believe they are. But we'll do an assessment at the beginning of the year to really create our benchmark data. But we're still trying to progress as fast as we can to get caught up, to where we need to be to know where our students are at.
It just sounds like it's in the right direction. Thank you.
Any other discussion on that? I think we're looking for first and a second yet.
Oh, I mean, I'll move that we do the fast bridge.
Carry trash.
Yeah.
Second.
This second?
Yeah.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, the next one we're gonna move on to is the middle school science curriculum recommendation. I think we should get a first and a second before we get into discussion on that. Kind of went into the.
They're gonna do their.
They're gonna do a presentation first? Okay, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I can't see very well. Did my friend Kevin make it yet?
I made it, yeah.
Okay, hooray. All right. So getting started again, this is an area in strategic planning where we talk about student success, and the need in the district is to have an aligned, relevant, viable curriculum in all subjects. So what we mean by that is pre-K through 12, skills should be feeding in. What we mean also is it has to be relevant, meaning that it meets the criteria of the state. And then viable means that we actually have the materials that we need for our teachers to be able to utilize to teach that curriculum. So aligned, relevant, and viable in all subject areas. When we started doing our scheduling this year, it was very clear that we really needed to address our middle school science. So Katie, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we put together a curriculum review cycle. And on the next slide, you'll see that we had to move 6-8 science up to being 22-23 so that we can be ready to roll that out in the fall of 23-24. Next slide, Katie. When you take a look at our science, our current state is that we are struggling a little bit. We aren't as low as we are in reading. However, in the last 4 years, we have gone from being 4.8% below the state average to 8.2. So that gap is widening, but I will tell you, I believe that a lot of it is because we haven't had that robust science curriculum and program for our teachers to draw upon. They really have been left to kind of find and fill the gaps in whatever that they can have to teach. We wanted to make sure that our science curriculum was aligned with the next generation science standards. Those actually came out about 30 or 13 years ago, not 30, 13 years ago. So when we say next generation, those came out 13 years ago. I don't see that they'll be changing much though, so we feel comfortable in moving forward. Our high school level, I met with their high school department chair, and I'm telling you, you have a rock star. There's so many great programs that they are teaching, so many classes, and they are currently reviewing the materials they are using. They'll be bringing those forward when they have them reviewed and have a recommendation. And we will be looking at our elementary science program in the fall. At this point, we're letting that one lie, and they're going to use the materials that they have been using. Some of them use FOSS kits, and others of them use a program that's online called Mystery Science. And for many, there hasn't been time in the day that they have dedicated to science. We now have the time in the day, and next year we'll be looking at aligning into the 6-8 program. Okay, so for the middle school, these are the things we looked at. We looked for aligned to the next generation science standards. We wanted increased outcomes. We want them to be measurable. We want to make sure that we have the materials available and it is sustainable, that we can provide professional development, and that we have a rigorous curriculum providing a hands-on experience. We felt that was very important in the area of science, and we want to get to K-12 alignment in this area. Okay, so you can see the three that we looked at most closely are the Open SciEd, Amplify, and iQuest. The Amplify was one that has some really good ratings. However, the expense of it is almost prohibitive. And then when you look at iQuest, that too had a lot of cost to it, and a lot of that information wasn't as much hands-on as it was with the Open SciEd. So you're going to find that our recommendation is the Open SciEd. They have piloted, I believe it's 2 units this year. Is that right, Kevin?
Every grade level tried at least one.
Okay, every grade level tried at least one. And then if you go to the next slide, Katie, I'm going to hand it over to our science guy, Kevin, so he can walk you through the next two areas so you'll understand the curriculum better.
Yeah, so to kind of reiterate what Jamie was saying, we're currently in a state where our middle school science curriculum is kind of piecemealed from a bunch of different resources. And there's multiple reasons for that. The primary reason has been that since NGSS came out, there really hasn't been a lot of good science resources created. Textbook publishers and stuff jumped on board and said, yep, we're aligned with NGSS, but they really didn't change what they were doing. And we've been looking for quality resources. We've been using EdReports, which is kind of a third-party reviewer of curriculum. Of the 17 middle school science curriculum resources that they've reviewed, only 2 have met expectations, and one is Amplify, which is very expensive and relies a lot on students using their computers. It's very computer-based. And OpenSciEd is the other one that's met expectations. The other resource the other independent reviewer we were looking towards was done by Achieve Education, where they vet curriculum and give it they call it the NGSS badge. And of the curriculum that they've reviewed, just to give you an idea of how little quality curricular resources there are out there, of the curriculum they've reviewed, less than 5% has met their expectations and earned the badge. And all the OpenSciEd units have earned the badge. So it's a high quality resource. You can go to the next slide. This is difficult to see, but I do have a handout. Thank you. The other reason we're interested in using this one is because it's a comprehensive and coherence, they call it, resource where the units kind of build on each other throughout. So if you can follow all the crazy arrows, it's just pointing out that one unit kind of builds on another. And in all of our grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, then they get exposed to physical science, life science, and earth and space science. The other thing that would be good about moving towards something like this is we do currently have some gaps where some standards are underrepresented or missing altogether. So this would kind of just reset everything, make sure we're covering what we're supposed to be covering. I don't know what the next slide is.
So the next slide is just our recommendation that we are recommending the OpenSciEd curriculum for grades 6 through 8. And you might be thinking, well, that's not going to be aligned with K-5. It will be aligned when we align it to the next generation science standards with the K-5, which we will do. We're going to be allocating a yearly allowance for materials in order to ensure that the materials are available, because this is a hands-on program. So in order to make this a viable curriculum, material has to be available to be used. Our professional development, which again, when you adopt a curriculum, you have to have professional development, will be done in-house. Kevin is getting some training and he will become the expert. We have set aside 4 of the 9 professional development days for the middle school team to be able to work as a science department and the implementation of this. And then the last page is those people who have reviewed this work.
Another thing that's kind of unique about this resource is it's an open education resource, I think they call it, where it was put together by a collaboration of different groups off of grant money. So the resource is freely available online. So what is starting to happen is different school districts around the country are starting to use it, and you're able to then tap in and almost collaborate with those school districts that are using that resource. Like they've set up Facebook groups, they have recorded webinars that are freely available. And Wisconsin's a little bit behind because they weren't a partner state with OpenSciEd, but starting to catch on in Wisconsin, where in Green Bay in June, there's training available for OpenSciEd. So we would be kind of the first ones. Like if you're asking what other districts are using this, there really aren't, because it's relatively new. It just came out in 2022. So it's because it's relatively new. There's a number, and free. And high quality. There's a number of opportunities we have to collaborate and do PD with other school districts.
So Katie, can you go back to the slide that highlights OpenSciEd so they can see the cost of it? So when you look all the way over to the right-hand side, you'll see that the initial expense we budgeted $7,500 for, and then we will have a yearly budget of $3,000. If that isn't enough, we can up that to $5,000. That's a really small amount of money to dedicate towards a viable curriculum in the area of science.
Terribly, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's cheap. So,
Yeah.
do you have any questions?
Go ahead, Chris.
Or-
Move to adopt OpenSciEd as our 6A science curriculum.
Okay, we got a motion to adopt OpenSciEd.
Yeah, seconded, I'll second that.
Carrie Trash is a second.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wow. Okay, you want to?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Discussion.
Yeah, open up more discussion. I thought we did the discussion before. Go ahead.
Oh, but we might start to, but.
Yeah, go
Further
ahead.
information, yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight, when this came up, the pilot last year, there was, some discussion in the curriculum committee, and one of the concerns that we had in reviewing that was, the COVID unit that was part of this curriculum, but it sounds like that's not going to be included from what we had talked about earlier. Kevin.
Correct. I mean, that's not part of their middle school program. Those were made by the same group of people, but it was like auxiliary units, not part of what we would be adopting.
Yep, yeah, and the other part of that too, that was just a little bit rose a red flag for me, was the section on 7.6, resources and human impact, a little bit about climate change. I see that's on the list here for grade 7, but it sounded like, realistically, if I understood you earlier when we talked, that there wasn't really enough time in the year to get to that section. That's what you were thinking, right? Realistically, with everything that you guys were working on.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, when we went through the pilot, that was brought up as a concern, and we decided just not to use that in the pilot, which is perfectly fine because it's addressing standards that I don't know that we're covering right now. If we go ahead and adopt this, yes, the plan, the hope would be to get 5 units done in each grade level, and that would be one that we wouldn't get to in 7th grade.
Yep, and the reason I bring that up, just for everyone here that may not be familiar with what happened last year, it's, I feel that these are controversial issues potentially, or at least these 2 units are, that would fall under the existing policy that we have. And I just want to make sure if we do cover those units in class, I would be okay with that. I would just ask that, we have some mechanism to ensure that policy is being followed so that we're not just presenting one side of the story, that we're looking at both sides. There's a lot of disagreement in some of these issues amongst the scientific community. And I think that, if we're going to introduce things into a science class, that we need to make sure that we're following our existing policy on that. So that's my 2 cents on that. And I'm just curious, do we have a mechanism now for that, or how would that be addressed if this was being brought up?
Edie, can you take that slide down so I can see the board better? So here's what we're doing right now, Tony, and I shared this with you and I think one other board member, it may have been Chris. What we're doing is we're going to make our curriculum visible. So we're working right now in the area of math and we're working in language arts, but science, if we adopt this, will be up before the beginning of the school year. We will show each of the units, any type of place where we need to put something in that, like the board policy, so people understand they have to follow it with the unit. We will have a note on there. So the teachers will be able to go just to that site, will pull it up, as will community, and they will see exactly what we're asking of them. But we won't leave that just to word of mouth. We'll make sure that that is in that curriculum, in the visible curriculum for teachers.
Okay, great. Yeah, and again, my concern, like I said, if we do cover in the classroom, I just want to make sure that we hear both sides and it's not just
Yep.
one side, because that's not really scientific, right? We want the whole picture, follow the scientific method, and we're good.
Mhm.
So there's some real data.
Go ahead, Beth.
My hope would be that we would get to that and cover it. And the reason I'm saying that isn't agreeing with it or not agreeing with it, but we have to help our kids have knowledge so when they leave Manitowoc Public School District and they go on to university, tech school, to the job, they have some understanding of those concepts that people are going to talk about. And all that means is having worked with Mr. Keel, I know discussions in his class are discussions. And most of the staff that I've worked with over the years are just discussions. A topic is brought up, nothing is forced for people to learn. But kids get smarter when they discuss and hear arguments on both sides. So my hope is that we follow this curriculum. It looks great. I love, again, the group that came up with the choice. There's a lot of teachers from a lot of different places, but we have to make sure that our kids have knowledge on all areas of science when they get out there, and let them make their choice.
I would completely agree with everything you said. So just to clarify, I'm not suggesting that we don't cover these units. I'm just suggesting that if we do cover them, then they should hear both sides. So
I agree.
think
I haven't seen what you've seen.
Yeah.
In my years in the schools, I've never seen.
Right. Well, COVID wasn't really around when you're in school.
And science was.
Well, climate change, I mean, there's a lot of debate, right? So there's,
And
we're not
and it's a
talking about
discussion.
yeah.
It's a discussion, and that's
Right.
I trust those professionals.
Yeah,
to
I
do
think
that.
that's what Tony was saying. Even when if we were to get to those, that it was something, because that's what science is all about, right? Taking an issue and then weighing. So that's,
Right.
I mean, making sure that we're following that science minded when and if we do get to that, because it is technically a controversial issue. I mean,
I don't know,
it
it's
is.
a controversial issue in public policy. I don't know if it's a controversial issue in science. And I think
Well, no,
science shouldn't be dealing with public policy.
science itself is controversial. That's the whole point, is to weigh both sides. I mean,
Well,
to look at one situation, that's how we come up with something new, you know.
Well, yeah,
Milk was bad for us at one point. You know what I mean? I guess the point is things change.
I know, but you know.
So because it is something that is there is two sides to that story. That's what his intentions were, which I fully agree with.
Well,
I
there are
agree
two
with that.
arguments.
I
There are two
just want to
arguments.
make sure we get to it rather than throw it aside and not talk about it
Absolutely.
because we're afraid to do that.
No.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that at all. And just to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that I don't trust our teachers to do that. I was just suggesting that, you know, if we're going to adopt this curriculum, I just want to make sure the curriculum isn't completely one-sided. And the curriculum, and if it is one-sided, then I think that it's on our great staff to really make sure that we're covering both sides, if they have to bring in an outside resource or whatever that looks like. So that's all I was suggesting, and I think that's quite reasonable.
I think what's exciting is that we do have a mechanism to make sure that we put something in the notes so that teachers understand. But more exciting to me is that this is a huge leap forward for our teaching staff to be able to have something that they know was taught the year before, that they have the materials available, and that we're meeting the standards. So I think that it's great that we're here already.
And just clarification, we've not been directed to do anything what we did right now is to make everything visible.
Yeah.
And to have this discussion. So we really are on the same page. Administration has not received any directive to do otherwise.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Beth.
Kevin, thank you. I think I understand why you've been so adamant about this for now 2 years. I understand that you just don't have a cohesive plan and you really want to rally around something that's going to be there. So I do understand the spirit of that. However, you know, Tony articulated that, I think, very professionally, and Biff did too at some point. It's just, we're just trying to make sure that if we just approve a huge curriculum, you know, you have to still oversee it. You can't just lay it out there and then say, here it is. Like you're going to go through each unit, or you're going to pick the units that you've shown here. He's just trying to articulate that we need to have, both sides of the information presented so that people can understand. A discussion is great, but I really don't want certain discussions that I don't think are appropriate. And to put this false flag that there's not a question of trust in the public sector, that's like, there's questions. If like everybody doesn't just trust everybody anymore. They've seen the dirties and the things that are being exposed every single day in this country in the education sector. So forgive me for saying that the parents want to see some transparency on every level. So I do understand what you're trying to say about discussion, but there's true reason why there's question. So, but thank you for your point of trying to get something that you can rally around to have an arrow so you can point where you want to get to. So thank you, Jamie. Thank you for the team. I do trust that you're going to take it in the right direction and you understand the concerns of the board members. So thank you.
Thanks. Is there any other discussion on that?
I think we should go.
Hearing none. We have a first and a second. All those in favor by saying aye?
All right.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. All right. And we're gonna move on to business and operations update.
Yes, I included an update in board book. We're budget building is underway and we're working on that. Goal is to get first draft of the budget by the end of June to the board for review. So trying to just get a first draft quicker than we have in the more recent years. So that's in the works currently. Just regular activities during this point in the year, partnership service contracts. We're working on getting those together. And then one of the major things that we have to work through every year is our renewal of insurances. So, and I just wanted to make the board aware because we've had extensive claims in our workers' compensation, and we've been working through changing our approach to that. And we have excellent systems in place, but unfortunately, what happens with workers' compensation is there's a lag effect to it. So what that means is that when you put a change in place for how you approach your insurance, your premiums are based on historic experience of claims, and we've had some large numbers of adverse claims in recent years. So we're paying 70% more than the average school district is, so which equates to about $200,000 in additional premium because of these claims. So that's money that we're not able to put into the classroom. So we've put a lot of really strong things in place. We have a group that goes to every building, and we work with our insurance company to review safety for employees. We're just working really, really intentionally and focused towards getting people back to work and on light duty. Because if you don't focus on getting people on light duty, you just have more, time loss, right, expense incurred. So, as a result of where our mod rate is, our current carrier has decided to drop us for the coverage. And so our current, our broker has been working to get new quotes. And so we think we have someone who's willing to give us a quote for workers' compensation, and we won't be forwarded to the state pool, which would be really, really bad. So I just want to so I'll have those quotes available at the June 13th meeting, because we have to have them prepped and ready to go for a July 1 reading. And so just wanted to make you aware of that. I'm happy that I included the analysis report, and just wanted to make the board aware of that.
So why do we have such high?
Yeah,
Unusually high.
You don't want to ask this.
I don't.
And part of it is rolling the dice too. You don't know what's, we have at times where staff will be trying to help students. One example is we had a claim at one point where someone was grabbing on a merry-go-round type thing, and then their shoulder gets thrown out. We had one even in the last couple of weeks where a student was running and they tried to break a fall, and then a shoulder, is a more recent one. So we have, we are very caring and organization. And so you have these things.
Yeah, in the report, if you're looking through the report that was provided, there's the breakdown in terms of the types of incidents that are contributing to it, and even locations.
Well,
Student behavior is the largest one right now, and so, the potential carrier that we sort of interviewed with, the other week, we went through and explained, our approaches to, avoiding losses, which they were very happy to hear about. They can work with paraprofessionals and special education teachers and help work to avoid those claims, but that is, and we're not unlike other districts, but we have that as a major claim area right now. So we're working really hard on it, and when we added the additional position to the business office, that when we looked at the overall separation of duties, we put on that new position is focusing on workers' compensation. It used to be in our payroll coordinator role, and she did a nice job with it. But this, however, gives that person's real focus is just on workers' comp, along with their other responsibilities, of course. But there's a lot of follow-up with doctors, with employees, and to really to manage that more closely. And so I'm very happy with our plan and what we have put in place, but we can't fix it overnight, which is really hard pill to swallow. But we're working on it.
The other thing, that was in the report too, that's very informative in terms of, as we're working with our broker in terms of this assessment, is your rates are lower if you're filing timely.
Yes.
So if you delay, things can happen, and if there's data that shows that when things get delayed, the situation gets much more pronounced and costly. So there's correlation between the filing. So if you're filing right away, people are on top of this, and things get resolved in a much quicker way too.
And 2 years ago, we used to have a process where, our payroll coordinator would submit the claims. And now we have it where so the building will fill out a form and get faxed in, and there would be more delays just with the process of handling it now. But 2 years ago, we implemented a nurse triage line, and we'll have that with the potential new carrier as well, where staff, call it in right away. Supervisor, is aware of it right away. And so we minimize that. Reporting time is really, really critical. So we've had some people wait 3 to 4 months. One was the longest delay was 166 days before an employee came back and filed a claim, And so there are cases too where we are being very active and I've been very active in saying, I want that investigated, and so if it comes in after a day or two and people are saying, well,
And you can see the areas that Angela is reporting on now, where you can see the progress, because it's impacted the data already from some of the improvements that Angela has implemented.
That's a good thing to do.
Tough days ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Looks like you break down the teacher, custodian, administrator, not listed coach. There's a discrepancy here, and see which one, where the claims are the highest.
Thank you for that.
So I have a quick question. Do we have any insight at this point how that's going to impact the budget? It sounds like that could cost us more than we thought. That's good.
The thought is that it's going to cost close to about a $50,000 increase for this next year on the budget. So that's where she had on page, I'm trying to think here, with the estimated mod is page 11 of the PDF that I provided. So, an average school district that has a 1.0 mod, which is your average cost is 282, and then ours will be estimated to be around 480,000.
How does that fit into your extrapolating out a budget projection for next year? 50 grand?
About 50 grand.
Okay. So I mean that you've already factored that in, or that we will have to make a budget adjustment?
We'll have to make a budget adjustment. Yes.
So you didn't factor in the higher costs at that time when we were originally proposing for referendum?
Correct. Yes.
Is there anything that we could be doing to address that proactively?
The best thing we can do right now are the things that we are really actively working on, getting people to claim right away, light duty, and the other thing that we're going to do with our broker, Ted Hayes is a gentleman that runs programs to educate our administrators, and we're going to just be very active about getting administrators to be sort of the risk
managers of their buildings and helping educate and just kind of monitor that within their buildings and giving them the tools to understand. So that's, in addition to our efforts that we're doing all the right things, but it's one of those things where, since it's based on the last 4 years of claims, we can't rewrite and unring the bell on that.
That's why I'm saying, we've been proactive, but we're still paying the price from 4 years ago in terms of where our experience level was at. But again, there's professional development, and there's always a balance there in terms of how we're utilizing everybody's time. Obviously, we're wanting to elevate student achievement levels, but we obviously don't want to all of a sudden incur more costs than we need to, which will take away from student achievement. So it's finding, and then again, we continue to work on our efficiency in terms of how we engage people, so that we find a way to make it as easy as possible for us all to contribute, for a greater return.
I want to highlight this, I'm sorry, but the average modifier is normally right around 1. If you're below 1, you're doing good. And you said 50 grand, but I mean, what, 200 grand over what the average should be. So like, no wonder we got dropped, just so everybody's aware. So
Yeah, it's been, from what I understand, historically, the last 4 to 5 years, there has been a chance that this outcome was considered. So it's not.
So who makes the decision on what's?
Hoping to reverse the trends.
Who makes the decision that the claim is valid? I mean,
We have claims adjusters that work, and they'll have independent reviews done, medical reviews at times. And they really actively work. United Heartland is our current carrier, and so we'll take a look at claims. We get, reports ongoing when there are active claims that are brand new, and they work to, call for an in-depth evaluation or another second opinion when it feels necessary.
Is there something in our employee handbook that talks about filing right away, or no matter what the injury is, to report it immediately? The severity of that, because I know that it's important for all, even in my job outside of this, it's extremely important, no matter what it is, even if it's insignificant, to report it so we have some sort of a documentation that's reported early.
And I think it's not in our handbook, and I think our principals and our administrators overall do a very nice job of getting people to use the hotline now, and they would say often that we had a lot of reported claims that were, I can't remember the word that they would use, but like insignificant in nature, but like were reported just as a safeguard, and you'd rather have that reported than not. Right. The other piece that the board would be advised to consider, and I've talked to the new potential carrier, and I need to look at some other district policies too, but we can have a demonstrate not participate policy put in place where, sometimes you'll get staff that want to participate in the kickball game with all of their kids, and all of a sudden their ACL is torn, or something where they're trying to just have fun with their kids, which is great and we'd encourage, but it just kind of, it sets a stage for, to help us prevent ourselves. At the end of the day, Wisconsin state law, we would be really on the hook for anything that would happen, but it would be another way to educate people to just kind of be careful. Right. And it's hard because we want them to be involved and have fun with their kids. We all want that, right?
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, so can you give me some examples of student behavior? Because that's 37 claims. That's that bad. So can you give me some more detail of what that means? Because it's not, lifting, handling, it's not slip and falls, it's not stuck against, it's not power tools, it's student behavior. So can we have some examples of what that means?
I would say like flying objects, like students throwing objects or pulling on arms, or, that'll happen quite frequently. Sometimes a kid will be running and then the teacher runs after them and they fall. So it's anything related to trying to counteract a student behavior of sorts.
Maybe we do need a fence, right?
Angela, thank you. Is there any way to quantify, how much of this is controllable versus uncontrollable? I mean, have we just been really unlucky last 4 years, or is there some?
Since,
To a degree, we've been unlucky, you know, and with just some claims piling up that we probably, you know, where you could luck out and have one every 10 years, we've had 8, you know, where that's, or, you know, 8 active claims right now in the last 2 years, where we've had like 1 and 0 in the previous years. So, there, you know,
sounds systemic to me. I mean, we're way out of line with the other school systems. It's like,
Is this public?
it's unique to,
this,
it's unique to the school system.
I believe this document is made viewable to the public. I think so. Yes.
Okay.
And I mean, we have this report, but then we have some more detailed information that, you know, I'm planning to share with the administrative team just to help inform it. But there are districts, the things that we're putting in place, like the accident incident review, like a Google form that we have to further investigate, like material handling, slips and falls, will help us work collaboratively in the district to try to, like, let's say someone's falling all the time in the same place. Well, why isn't this salted better? Why isn't this taken care? You know,
That's not the issue of these claims. Yes,
correct.
I understand.
Yeah, you're right. And a lot of it is going to be education, and districts that really have made an impact on their experience modification rate have done the things that we're putting in place and implementing. It's just, you can't change it overnight. So am I concerned about it? Yes, very much so. I mean, we really need to work on, and we have been taking a more, you know, we've been working on it all along. It's just one of those things that, you know, we have to make sure that everyone's more aware of it.
Yeah. Sorry, this is alarming.
Yeah, our team, just to address the, you know, the capacity of our teachers and their ability to deal with students with challenging behaviors, our team has focused a lot of effort and energy in working with Angela and allocating for professional development opportunities. So our paraprofessionals and our teachers grow in their ability to deal with challenging behaviors and know when it's appropriate to, you know, intervene and when it's appropriate to remove themselves from a situation where, you know, where they're not allowing themselves to be in harm's way. So we have our paraprofessionals doing a train the trainer event this summer. We'll come back and then work and support that group of individuals, and then have an ongoing system of paraprofessional training throughout the year with some onboarding practices and things. Same as our teachers, so there'll be continued opportunities for professional development for them to learn how to better support students. So we, you know, collectively know that we need to be more proactive in our approach to keeping our staff safe and growing their ability to meet the needs of our kids.
So just to make sure I'm reading this right, guys, the average mod is 282, right? So that means like the state average is that, and we're at 480.
Correct. Yes, that's the premium paid.
Yeah, I would love to see, you know, at some point, maybe a plan. I think that's just a real opportunity to improve somehow, right? You just got to figure that out.
For sure. If you scoot down to let's see here. Nope, it's up. It's one of the first pages of the report. The overview and history. So it's after the table of contents. So we've had a really low claims year. Our modification rate for next year is based on years 19, 20, and 21 right now. Okay. Or that determines our mod for 23. And if you'll notice in the loss amounts column in 2021, when we had COVID, we had $81,000. So that was a low year. So next year, that will be in there and it's going to fall off, and our mod rate, we're going to have a really hard time making it not go up further from the standpoint of that COVID year is going to fall off. And then we're going to have higher claims overall for, you know, it's going to just fall off of the.
Go ahead. So, whoever we paid to do this, we didn't do this internally. This is M3 Insurance.
Correct, yes.
So they did a great job. This is very good information. However, I see that they group the occupation so that they don't have it broken apart between paraprofessionals and teachers. Somehow they're just combined because it says custodian, maintenance, administrator, not list, coach, and then it just says teacher. So I would like this to be broken out between paraprofessional and teacher in the future,
Okay.
I would make a motion for that, if
Sure.
somebody would second that, because we need to see where we're getting beat up, and where we're getting hurt, because, obviously, if you look at the report, Franklin has a lot of the claims, and Jefferson has a lot of the
Yeah.
claims.
I was
So
noticing that too.
I'd like to see where we're hurt. And I'm trying to say, hey, how can we resolve this, and what type of category of employee are we
Sure.
hurt?
Which, I mean, there's a lot of
So,
special needs and stuff at Franklin.
so I'd like to know.
Some of that valuable information. I
So,
got that.
and it's not broken apart in this report, so that could maybe indicate what's happening, and maybe we need to allocate more resources for those people, our teachers.
That are justification for.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Is
So,
that doable?
Yeah, yes, and we have some more drill down data that includes staff names that we wouldn't, of course.
I wouldn't
put
want
in,
names,
You know,
I just
we wouldn't, for PHI wouldn't include this, but that's where like we can share and look at that internally to plan and see where there may be more supports needed in some places or more education. So, and with the paraprofessional and teachers, I'll definitely see if they can
break it out.
separate that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you put a motion on the floor, but we don't really need
We
to
don't need
vote on that
Okay.
or
Well,
anything.
I just want to
yeah,
make
I'll
sure.
bring
If that's something you can do it,
Yeah,
are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with
Okay.
it, as long as we get a report in the future.
Right. And yeah, I want to make sure that's true.
but I think,
I'll retract my.
I'll just, the thing on the paraprofessionals is, I mean, anecdotally, I mean, I've had like maybe like 20 emails from paraprofessionals that say, oh, you know, I've been stabbed with pencils, I've got 2 concussions, et cetera. When they're bitching about they're not getting enough wage, they sometimes really open up. And it seems to me that just based on my email, that there's really a problem in that part of the workforce. And that they're really subjected to the toughest situations. And I'd be, honestly, I'd be filing claims too, but some of that stuff is like, well, let's we're trying to work on student behavior. And that goes with also what you're trying to do in terms of
Right.
Efficient stuff. And maybe that'll help, but
Well, and with the crisis intervention training, that we support and invest in that yearly. We're gonna, just increase our education on those areas, and there's a certain degree of it that comes with the territory, in some cases where you can't prevent it all. But there's a lot that we can do to try to avoid it as much as we can.
You want a wellness report, there's your wellness report on that respect right here. My opinion.
no.
Any other discussion on that? Okay, thank you for that, Angela.
Well,
Sorry, Angela. for-
Oh, you're fine.
for that.
No, that's good. She's.
ask away.
And then, okay. Remarks from the board president, which we know Stacy's, away with family. So she didn't really tell me much. We do have a summer leadership institute that was sent out by, I believe it was sent out by WASB. I'm going to have her send you guys an email and let her know if you want to be involved in that. And other than that, I believe we were talking about it earlier. I think it's on like a Saturday in the middle of summer.
This one says Summer Leadership Institute, Safe
Yeah.
Food, Healthy Students,
I got
July
that.
14th through 15th.
Does anybody have any interest in that? Did you see this? Otherwise, come take a look at it and make sure you let Stacy know or Lori know if you want to know that. We'll circulate it again. Right. And other than that,
July 14th through 15th, Hyatt Regency, Green Bay.
correct. Nothing else. I'd like to thank Lori publicly. She really helped me get through this as my first couple of meetings run. Yeah, she's following her lead for sure. Awesome. So I appreciate that. Future meeting dates. Do you have anything?
It's nuts that. Wasn't that sad? Wasn't there a change in meeting dates in some?
We moved from Wednesday to a Tuesday for
Correct, for a
the
special.
second meeting.
But that's this meeting we're at right now.
Yeah, I know.
And then we have,
June 13th. I did send out, all of the board invitations of upcoming events for the, tomorrow, the Youth Friendship Night, the quarter century retirement celebration, the scholarship night, McKinley Academy graduation. I haven't done the graduation. but I'll do that.
That was my only question. I just wanted to ask how the graduation plans are going and, when the invite is going out for that.
You should have.
We got it
everybody
right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything on board.
Okay.
All right, look for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I moved to adjourn, yeah.
Motion by Chris.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool.
Biff second. Yep. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
God, it's only 7:50.
We're adjourned.
So time to party.
It's not the school, it's not the old school. board, is it?
Well done.
Even-
And it's something that- yeah.
Sure.
Start over.